Hello everyone and welcome to Radio Spekhof, the first episode of 2016. We are a Berlin English language news show and my name's Yuri.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Joel. Welcome to the show and welcome to our audience here at Donau 115.
You guys give yourselves round of applause.
Coming up on this episode, we'll talk about what else, rent increases and what you can do about them. We'll go through the official checklist that determines how much your flat is worth. For example, if your building has a communal party room or a fancy lobby, you might be in trouble. But if you don't have bike racks or a concealed garbage area, you might be able to fight against higher rents, and we'll tell you how.
I'm glad that I just found out that my place is actually super awesome. I have all those things.
You do not have a party room, do you? Well, we'll find out later.
Every room I'm in is a party room, Joel.
Yeah, is that just a lounge room?
We'll find out later in the show. I'll go through exactly what determines a party room, how big it has to be, and how far away from your flat it has to be. But before we get to that...
All right, let's hear some statistics from 2015.
It is our first show of the year, of course, so let's talk about what happened last year, 2015. Some numbers from the police. Berlin is becoming a pickpocket hotspot. The number of reported small-time robberies has gone up quite a lot recently. In 2010, police received 13,000 complaints of pickpocketry. Not sure if that's a word. In 2015, that number is expected to reach 40,000. So by the end of the year, it was 40,000. So as well as the traditional shopping areas and tourist hotspots, Warschau Brücke and Kopposatur are among the main areas where you can expect to have your wallet taken. So no doubt the tourist boom has contributed to this, which leads us to our next statistic from 2015, which is that Berlin airports experienced another record year. There were 29.3 million passengers passing through Tegel and Schönefeld.
Wow.
And that number is expected to reach 32 million by 2017 when the new/old Berlin airport is due to open. Now, the capacity of that still under construction airport is 27 million, so there's a bit of a mathematical problem there because there'll be 32 million passengers landing. So exactly where the remaining 5 million passengers are expected to go is anyone's guess.
We might just add another wing to the building and maybe it's like 2025.
That's how they got into trouble in the first place, Yuri. They kept adding to it. Don't give them any more ideas.
All right. We can wait another 10 years.
So the other number that's been released by the police is the number of people killed while riding bicycles in Berlin last year was 10. That's the same number as 2014, so thank God there wasn't an increase. Take care on the roads, especially now while it's slippery out with a bit of ice coming. And there were 18 pedestrians who died on the streets in the same year.
Yuri, you have some updates for us about some changes in the new year.
Yeah, so that was last year. This year there are a few changes hitting us as well. For example, for the BVG rates, the Monatskarte, your monthly ticket, has gone up €2 to now 81 euros. The Kurzstrecke ticket has gone up by 10 cents to 170. The daily passes have gone up to a whopping 7 euros. That's very high.
Well, the comment on this is that Berlin actually, although it's a cheap city, it continues to have one of the most expensive public transport systems of any European metropole. So a single journey in Berlin costs you, as you know, €2.70, and the equivalent journey would cost you €1.50 in Rome, €1.80 in Paris, €2.15 in Barcelona, and in London, which of course is the scary epitome of expensive that keeps us all here. Basically, it costs €2.90 with one of those Oyster cards. So Berlin's pretty up there for transport costs, which might explain why the BVG made a profit last year for the first time ever.
And in Tallinn, it's for free entirely. Is that right?
Tallinn, Estonia, I'm proud of the city, I used to live there. They have a completely free public transport system if you're a citizen of the city. If you're registered and living there, you get a card and you can ride the public transport for free. It's not a bad idea.
I think we could get that going here.
Some other things going up, have gone up in this coming year are your health insurance costs. The average is 15% across all the Krankenkasse. Everyone's paying a bit more for their health insurance now.
15%?
15% more on average. Make sure you take use of it.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the doctor tomorrow.
Yeah.
I have some weird moles I've been putting off looking at.
They give away a lot of stuff, the Krankenkasse.
One thing's getting cheaper. Library passes are now going to be for free instead of 10 euros per.
That's a great value.
It is. I don't know about the Staatsbibliothek though. That's the one that's always expensive. But I think the local passes are. You used to have to pay money just to get a library card. No, you don't.
I think you get just one card for all the public libraries, and that includes Staatsbibliothek.
And the other change that's coming up, it has already changed, is that taxis now have to accept EC or credit cards. That comes after a court ruling. I don't know if that's really going to do you any good on the street, though, when you're trying to have that argument late at night. You know, like, according to ruling of court in Charlottenburg XY3, you must accept my EC car driver. Is this really not good? I don't know. Taxi drivers don't report a case law.
I like your use of the phrase, on the street.
All right, guys, before we move further, we had some sad news today, or yesterday if you want to be exact. David Bowie has died.
He has died. The ultimate Berlin artist and temporary resident. He did it all before all of us and did it better than any of us. He lived in West Berlin from 1976 until 1978, and he recorded his classic Berlin trilogy, which consisted of 3 albums, Low, Heroes, and Lodger. Lodger's my favorite David Bowie album. It's my pre-party music. I always put that on when I want to get a bit geared up. And of course, one of those included the fantastic hit Heroes, which had that prophetic line, I remember standing by the wall and the guns shot over our heads and we kissed as though nothing would fall. And that was written in 1977. Now, remember, the wall didn't actually fall till 1989. So when I hear that, I always think it's quite amazing that he foresaw that. At the time, it wasn't inevitable that it would fall. Anything could have happened. He also wrote a song called Yassassin, which was inspired by his Turkish neighbors, and a few clangers like the saxophone squealing song Neukoln, which is spelt incorrectly with no umlaut and just one L. So don't worry, Dan, you can't say Neukoln either. David Bowie couldn't spell it.
I'm actually considered in many ways the David Bowie of my apartment.
You know, one thing that I just found out today, there's one film that Bowie filmed and that he starred in that was filmed in Berlin, and it's the 1978 Just a Gigolo.
That sounds terrible. Is it any good?
Well, I've only found out about it today. I haven't watched it. I recommend you view it
He
within the
starred
week.
in lots of movies, actually. But maybe that was the only one he filmed when he was here, is perhaps
Yeah, that's the Berlin one.
So unfortunately, our usual co-host Maisie is not with us tonight.
Oh yeah, we should probably mention any of the creeps who are just tuning in the podcast for that.
For Maisie's voice, yeah.
The dulcet tones are missed. That's okay, though. I mean,
Maisie's traveling, and she would have been. She's very upset that she wasn't here to talk about this because she is a huge Bowie fan, and not only a Bowie fan, but a Bowie expert. And she could have told you far more than we can. So we apologise, not only for Maisie not being here, but for her expertise being lacking on this little segment in which we attempt to pay tribute to somebody who I don't think anyone's got a bad word to say against.
We should say that where he lived, David Bowie, in Schöneberg, people have been gathering today. We just got a live report via the mobile phone.
Well, that's
there's
true.
About 100 people out front of his house. There's candles, there's pictures. Earlier today, apparently, this is first-hand knowledge, someone rolled up in their VW, rolled down their window and started playing Let's Dance before casually driving off. If you want to pay tribute, I guess, you can go down there and do it there.
Hauptstrasse 115, I believe, isn't it?
155.
155 down in Schöneberg. And the other thing you should do, I think, is if you're wanting to brush up on your German, is try and find a few of his German language songs. He's got a few of them out there, and that's a good way to try and do a bit of translation for yourself.
what's new in weather and crime, Yuri?
Well, it's gotten a bit cold in Berlin.
Ah, this just in.
And it's not. It's now. It's a bit warmer.
Happened. No, okay. How about this one? There was a call put into the emergency line that there was a body seen half frozen over in the Spree River. Emergency workers rushed down to discover that it was a blow-up doll. Also important to keep track of, don't let your pipes freeze over, because the firefighters will have to come in for the water being flooded in your apartment and will discover your giant cannabis grow operation. This happened, 162 plants were discovered at an emergency call for a bus pipe over on Merringdam. And so that's news.
Weather and crime together.
And Joel, there's a very good reason why you shouldn't make a gangster movie if you're actually a real-life criminal.
Last week, an alarmed citizen called police to a mobile phone shop in Hohenschönhausen to report a robbery, and the police arrived to find several masked and armed men inside the shop. Guns were drawn, and there was very nearly a shootout before the armed men pulled off their masks and explained that they were just shooting a movie. And the movie probably ended up a whole lot better because of the real-life police intervention. Now, the police, maybe because they were pissed off because of a waste of their time, they decided to ID everybody and check everyone who was working on this indie film. And they found out that the director was actually wanted for non-payment of many fines, and they held him at the station until he paid up.
I feel like we could pitch the making of this movie as its own. We can get real meta with this. All right, in Germany, you can get into trouble with the downloading and uploading of films. I think we all know people who are like, I paid a €1,000 fine for torrenting or something. I don't know how that works. So the question is, what happens if you are responsible for operating a website that facilitates film sharing?
A whole lot worse happens in more than just a €1,000 fine, that's for sure. And if you ever streamed movies from the pirate site or downloaded movies from the pirate site that formerly known as kinox.to or something like that.
Any fans?
Anyone here? Any guilty parties? Oh,
this is being recorded. No, it's okay. They don't want
It's big in Germany.
I know I've streamed from it. And for that reason, I would like to express some kind of solidarity with a 29-year-old Leipzig man, Arvid O. We don't know his last name. That's the charming function of the German justice system. They mask your last name after you get convicted and just give you a letter. So Arvid O was a 29-year-old Leipzig man who was a few weeks ago jailed for 3 years and 4 months for operating the website kinox.to. The Leipzig court found the man was involved in setting up and running the film streaming site from about 2011 onwards. That's a lot of time, 3 years and 4 months. That's a really long time for providing a service that pretty much everybody uses.
Yeah, but like per movie, that's like 1 second. So that's,
Here's what I did. I called up the lawyer of Mr. Arvid O and asked how we might be able to send letters to him or express our solidarity with him. Because, come on, if you've used these sites, you're guilty too. And it's not fair that this one guy is sitting in jail for 3 months for doing something that all of us participated in. This has happened before, of course. There was a whole previous round of this going on. The Pirate Bay founders were sent to jail for a while. That Kim.com guy is still
Mega Upload.
Mega Upload guy still in New Zealand trying to avoid getting extradited.
Actually, it's Kim D now.
Yeah, that's right. And he's trying to avoid getting extradited. And these people, a lot of, there's this tendency to let them go and just forget about them. But I don't think we should. We all use their services. We're all guilty too. So as soon as I found out how you can write to that gentleman, I'll put it on our website and I'll let you know so you can, if you feel like it, write a letter to the poor guy and say, thanks for letting me watch that movie that one time and I'm sorry you're sitting in jail because of it.
But if we're all guilty, shouldn't we all just be in jail?
Theoretically, shouldn't we have some kind of form of collective punishment? Or if society deems it not something that should be in jail, should it be imprisonable at all is the bigger question there.
All right. Hit me with a stinger. And now in politics, Yuri.
It is an election year, but there are fears that the Bürgeramt won't be able to register everyone to vote.
The next Berlin local election takes place in September, and to vote, you need to be registered by June 18. You can vote if you're a European citizen living in Berlin, registered anywhere here, or of course if you're a German citizen. Now, there are more than 80,000 German citizens who moved to Berlin last year, and more than 200,000 people switched flats in the city at the same time. So all this is creating a bit of concern because in order to vote, you need to be registered at the Bürgeramt. And there are fears that the Bürgeramt, if the same thing happens this year, as many people moving here and moving around, will not be able to cope with that many registrations in time, and therefore there will be a lot of people who are disenfranchised as a result of the Bürgeramt having this ridiculously outdated and slow system of registering everybody.
Well, they have come up with a 12-point plan recently to tackle the problem.
Listen to our last show to hear all about that. Yes. So this is a genuine fear that some citizens won't be able to have their say because of a pretty simple system or systematic error. I actually have a constructive suggestion this time.
And what's that?
Last time I was saying let's just get rid of the whole thing, and then people said you can't.
What? No one votes?
No one. Different system of registration.
Burn it all to the ground. No, that's good. That's good.
So here's my suggestion. What about just simply online registrations? Okay, so when you register at the Bürgeramt, you go in, you show your contract, they look at your ID and they say, okay, you're registered, that's it. That's basically it. So what about just an upload system? You go to the Bürgeramt website, you upload a scan of your contract and a scan of your ID, someone checks it. If it looks a bit dodgy, maybe then you get invited in for an in-person inspection of your documents or something. Wouldn't this save time?
They would still have to look at the same documents, like marginally.
Surely it would be a lot quicker. You just clicking through.
It's true. You don't have to wait for the person to come up with their number. Berlin's Pirate Party is in a bit of trouble as well.
Yeah, last election, one of the big winners was the Pirate Party. They gained a bunch of seats. They were the young upcomers who were going to revolutionize the way we do politics. Now, unfortunately, they're not doing so well this year. Unfortunately, I say that as my own political bias. I was quite excited by the emergence of the Pirate Party. But their top politician has resigned at the end of last year. His name was Martin Delius. We actually interviewed him on a previous episode of Radio Speakhouse way back when. And he has resigned from the party because it's been kind of falling apart internally. It's been losing a lot of support. So I guess in tribute to Delius and his time at the top of the party there, he really did a very good job of making use of a special function inside the Berlin Senate where anybody gets to ask tough questions of the ruling government. And he did that very well. And as a result of his questioning, we know all about the airport debacle and a lot of other issues that would have otherwise remained unquestioned had they not been in power. So thanks for that good work. It's quite likely that the Pirate Party will completely drop out of the Senate at the next coming up elections. They're already at 3%, which I don't think is even enough to get a seat.
It's not. But is he still the head of the commission that's looking into the fuck-ups of the BER?
I don't know if he's the head of the commission, but he found out a hell of a lot of details about what went on there. Pretty much everything came from a parliamentary question from the Pirate Party. But we will soon, in the near future, have an in-person interview with another aspiring politician, the comedian Georg Kammer, who is going to be running here in the Neukoln district to try and get a seat, and he's going to tell us all about the tactics he's going to use to try and get himself elected. It's coming up on a future episode. And in other political news, there's a new development plan for Tempelhofer Feld to allow refugee housing, and that new plan is going to be adopted in February.
Yeah, so about a year and a half ago, most of us that have lived here will remember there was this massive referendum where 700,000 Berliners signed a petition to keep the Tempelhofer Feld free of all buildings. And now, just a year and a half later, there was a heated discussion, because there's also a refugee crisis, to put up some building on the airport field to house refugees. And that plan is now likely going ahead. There is a little problem with it, though, and not only is it kind of suggested by a lot of people in the discourse that this is a kind of sneaky circumvention of the results of that petition, which is founded on the idea that nowhere in that new law amendment it says that these buildings that will be built for refugees will actually have to be built back once the crisis ebbs off. And there's also no mention of what kind of buildings, that there's no limit. It can be more than just hangars that are put up. So they can put up modular buildings, container buildings, all kinds of stuff that can be permanently there.
You're suggesting that the temporary housing for refugees is going to be turned into fancy condos as soon as they can gentrify the refugee housing?
That's what's been discussed in the debate.
That's the criticism, because the original law that came into force as a result of that referendum was that nothing should be built on the field at all. So now they're changing that law, even though the people didn't agree to that, and saying now we're going to build these things, and it's kind of hard to argue against refugee housing, isn't it?
But here's another problem with it that I think is a real problem. If you build, the hangar is already used, the old hangar is already used for refugee housing. If you put up more permanent or impermanent buildings on the field, you'd be creating a kind of a refugee slum. There'd be massive segregation, and the adverse effects of that have been documented manifold.
Because there's several thousand already, up to 5,000 on that one site already, and they're not integrated into the community. They're not participating in local.
Exactly.
Yeah, and do you know what? I've actually seen the diagram that they put out for showing you where they're going to be building these temporary shelters. Although, as you say, the new law doesn't actually say they're temporary. That does make me suspicious. But before I heard that, I didn't really think there was much of a problem with this, because when I saw where they were going to build them, they were only building them directly in front of the airport building itself, like on the concrete, the place where they have, the festivals and things like that, and not anywhere on the boundaries or on the park itself. So I thought, well, okay, it's just a bit of, they're already quite close to existing buildings, and, if it's going to be temporary, but maybe they will try and be sneaky and let other building development.
So to be fair, the plan is to use almost done modular buildings that were going to be used for the International Garden Show that's coming up still, I think. There are these big kind of garden hangars, like greenhouses, I guess. I don't know, and
Totally.
That would be used for refugee housing now instead. The problem is that to amend the law, there has been a new development plan, and once that is set in place, there's no, it's allowed to build on there afterwards, after you remove these temporary buildings.
Can I just say that my opposition to the Tempelhof development plan in the first place was not that they were building on the Tempelhof Feld. I think it's perfectly legitimate to use some of that space to develop housing. My issue with it was that they were going to build luxury housing only, with a very, very tiny percentage of what they call affordable housing, which of course is not even properly defined. So they were kind of lying to the people, saying, "Oh, we're going to ease the housing crisis by building new," but actually, what was going to get built would not help the housing crisis at all. It would just push up in rents in the areas. We'll discuss that why later, or the function of the Mietspiegel. So I never had a problem with the actual development itself. Rather, it was the nature of the development, and so I'm quite okay with them developing refugee housing on Tempelhofer Feld, although it would be nice if the law actually stipulated that and didn't let it, if it's really that loosely worded, then that's a bit of a worry.
It is.
Speaking of the refugee crisis, there's a thank you to the volunteers being put together by the city of Berlin.
Yeah, the city of Berlin wants to show their appreciation of everyone that's pitched in during the last year, or how long has it been going? Everyone's pitched in, people have been helping out a lot. So on the 31st of January, there will be 50 theaters, museums, and other institutions open and for free for everyone.
All the museums?
50 of them.
Well, it must be the big ones.
Yeah.
Good ones.
They didn't say which 50.
Well, there's a list online. You can go through the whole program. 31st of January.
Are we allowed to go even if we didn't volunteer or if our lives were in no way affected by the refugee crisis?
I think that...
I mean, morally, perhaps, Maybe we should all go out and do a day of volunteering before we go and take that free museum pass that we didn't really deserve.
Yeah, let's scam some free museums out of this.
Off the back of poor asylum seekers coming here.
And now a word from our sponsors.
We don't do this much on Radio Spätkauf because we have no sponsors. Rather, we have supporters. Daniel, you didn't read properly. Supporters.
I read it. I thought sponsors had a better ring to it. It made it sound like we were someone who had sponsors.
It does. It would be good. But unfortunately, the best we're getting is free movie and popcorn from Mobile Kino. Yay. Our friends at Mobile Kino give us... I didn't tell you that, boys, did I? You get free movie and popcorn if you go to Mobile Kino.
Yeah, I wasn't aware.
I was keeping that secret.
You've been eating my popcorn?
We're generously supported by our friends at Mobile Kino, Berlin's traveling cinema. They've got some great programming coming up, such as the Quentin Tarantino retrospective, starting on Friday the 15th of January. It's going to be featuring all 8 of the director's previous films. He's got a new one coming out, so this is a great chance to catch up on the ones that you pretend that you've seen, such as Reservoir Dogs, which I've
seen Reservoir Dogs on the big screen. It just was 2 decades ago.
You can relive your childhood, Daniel. And in fact, actually, they're going to be showing Reservoir Dogs on 35 millimeter.
The children gathered round to watch Reservoir. I don't know why I was English when I was a child.
They're going to be showing Reservoir Dogs with 35 millimeter print, which is very rare these days. In case you're not aware, there's hardly any cinemas anywhere that still use print films. So if you get a chance to see a print film, you should go and watch it. And this is one case. So make sure you check the Mobile Kino website to find out all the screening dates and locations. It's going to be from the 15th until the 30th of January. mobilekino.de. Thanks for the free movies.
Also, I think this is right around the time of the releasing of Hateful Eight. So I think that probably Tarantino will show up.
There's a rumor
at the screenings.
There's a rumor
because you probably want to come to all of them. I mean, he's gonna be in. He loves Berlin.
He does.
He's filmed the movie's coming out. He'll probably be at the screenings. So you can come by for that.
We're a news show. We're all about the facts. That was not one of them.
It's been reported. Let's get into that housing report, Yuri.
All right. Joel, you've got a very proactive way of there is a very proactive new way of a local council, namely the Kreuzberg-Friedrichshain one, to keep rents low. What are they doing?
Well, the Green Party-controlled Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg City Council has found, an interesting new method to try and stop rent increases, and it's used what's called the first refusal right to prevent a speculative investor, which basically is all investors, from buying an entire building in Rangelstrasse. So what happens is when a building or even an apartment gets put up for sale, the city government has from this old-fashioned law, a right to refuse that or to actually buy the property itself. And it hardly ever gets used, but it's now actually being used as a mechanism. What happened was the local council organized for the city-owned housing company called Geer Woonbouw together with a non-profit foundation, to actually purchase an entire building in Rangelstrasse to make sure that the people who are living there can continue to have the rents that they currently have. Now, this is a new kind of strategy for public or community-controlled housing. It's not outright public housing in which the city government would build and own the housing directly. It's being done through a city-owned company, but in effect, the people still get to live there at discounted rates. And it's a step in a different direction for Berlin, which used to have a really huge amount of public housing, but then in the 90s and in the 2000s, under Klaus Wowerite's governments, they sold off just huge swathes of public housing to private investors. And as a result, all the rents went up. If the government had hung on to that housing, it would have been able to have some control over the rents, and we wouldn't be seeing the rent increases that we're currently having today. So I think this is a really interesting and proactive way for the government to step in. I don't know if it's going to be expanded. It's only one building, but presumably the city government has this right over every building. And if it could get enough public pressure, maybe they'll use it more often, this mechanism.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, I mean, of course, it needs institutions that are able to buy those buildings. So you need to have institutions that have funds in order to buy them and manage them. So it's not a simple matter of just doing it for everywhere. You've got to make sure that those city-funded government-owned housing companies actually have the funds to purchase those buildings in the first place. But I think, yeah.
Well, they can do that by buying the houses and raising the rent. It's a perfect system.
Don't vote for Daniel.
Maybe I don't get it.
So we had a question from a listener.
What?
Yeah, someone wrote in. They wanted to know what happened to an old story we talked about a little while ago, which was about the Citizens Initiative on Social Housing. Yuri, what happened?
Yeah, so back in summer last year, this initiative successfully collected the 20,000 signatures needed for the first step of any referendum. And in fact, they got over 50,000 signatures together and handed them over to the Senate. And this pressure was apparently enough to inspire the Senate to propose and adopt the new Gesetz über die Neuausrichtung der sozialen Wohnraumversorgung in Berlin. Short version is Berliner Wohnraumversorgungsgesetz. And yeah, all right. And the law is intended to provide Berlin with the much needed social housing. There has been some criticism that the law wasn't going quite deep enough, but the last update on the initiative's website was on November 12th last year, the date where that law was adopted. So I guess we'll see if there's going to be any further.
Whether or not the initiative actually gets the referendum, they've had a huge impact on the debate within local politics. All the parties have had to react to this public pressure, and they've all had to make positive noises and steps in the direction of something towards better social housing. So it's had an effect anyway. Dear listener, thank you for your question.
So this time of year, I usually get a letter from my landlord stating like a new rent that I'm supposed to pay and sign a thing to say that I'm going to do that, and then I don't sign it and decide whether I kind of pick a rent that I think's reasonable. Is there Joel? You have some tips for us on dealing with these situations?
Sure. If you get a letter from your landlord demanding a rent increase, which I recently had in my WG that I live in, there are some things you can do. So our landlord is trying to put our rent up by 15%, which is the maximum legally allowed over 3 years. So me and my flatmates, we've decided to fight against it. And not just because we're broke and we can't afford it, but also because every rent increase affects the officially indexed average rents for the area, which allows landlords to charge even more, so it creates an ever upward cycle that affects everybody in the neighborhood. So fighting against a rent increase, it's actually not as scary or as difficult as you might think. Firstly, you've got to be a member of a renters association. We're members of the Berliner Mietergemeinschaft. It costs about 70 euros a year. And the association uses that money to hire lawyers who help you when you run into conflict with your landlord. So recently I went down to the Renters Association office on Sonnenallee, and they went through a big checklist with us to help us figure out whether the landlord was actually within his rights to charge the full 15%. And in our case, it turns out that we're actually already paying more than rent than we should, so according to the condition of our house. So we're fighting against this rent increase in court. And it's really a no-risk situation for us because we don't have to pay the legal costs, and the worst outcome is that the court decides that we do have to pay this rent increase, and then we just pay it. So
Does the Mietergemeinschaft pay the legal costs?
That's right. They pool everybody's money. They've got thousands and thousands of members, so through the process of mutualization, they can afford to hire lawyers and help out the ones who have cases. So it's only rational to join a renters association, and then if you do get a rent increase, to fight against it. So now what's going to happen is a court's going to look at this checklist about our housing conditions and some photographs of our flat, and it's going to decide what our rent should actually be. So I thought it would be informative if we went through some of these points on this checklist so that you listeners at home can get an idea of what condition your apartment it has to be in if it has to qualify for higher rents. So it's a bit of a game, this checklist. There's 2 columns. There's a plus and a minus column. And if you match any of the listed conditions, you get a point in one of the 2 columns. And then at the end, you add it up, and it tells you whether you should be whether your apartment is of high, medium, or low quality. And then you look up the Mietspiegel, which tells you the average rents for your area, which band you're in, and then it tells you how much rent you should be paying. That's how it works. All right, so who wants to play the game? Ready?
Me.
All right. You all, listeners here at Donau 115 can also yell out too if you feel like it. So let's start in the bathroom.
I have a bathroom.
No, wait. Do you have a shower? And a shower, by the way, is a very specific thing.
Okay.
A shower is a separate enclosed cubicle. A shower is not a shower head over a bath with a shower curtain around the bath. That does not count. So that's just a bath.
So that's the reason why every time I see a newly renovated place on Immobilien Scout, they have a weird random bath plus shower so they can increase the rent.
Exactly, yes.
That's amazingly stupid. Okay, moving on.
Do you have a hanging toilet? Now, this is a special kind of toilet that is kind of off the ground. It's sort of like built into the wall, so it's like not actually connected to the floor. Have you ever even seen one of these things?
Yeah. That's like a hotel toilet.
A hotel toilet, yeah.
Are they good or are they expensive or
It
cheap?
depends. Yeah.
That's a good thing. That was bad if you don't want your rent to go up. That's a luxurious thing because it's easier to clean underneath. So, yeah, okay. Are the majority of your walls tiled? So the majority of the walls in your bathroom have to be tiled. So more than half of the percentage of the walls.
Is it the number of walls that have tile on them, or does the tile have to cover like if the tiles go like halfway up the wall?
That's for a court to decide.
Okay.
Daniel.
All right.
Okay.
I will tear the tiles off. It's fine.
So there are some really basic things like whether you have hot water and whether there are windows in the bathroom. So anyway, that was the negative column.
I want to know about the party room.
Hang on, we'll get there.
Right.
Okay.
Wait,
Do you have a very big sink or a double sink? And do you have one tap for your hot water and one tap for your cold, or do you together, or do you have 2 separate taps? Like the old-fashioned style, where you have to turn them both on and mix the water together in the basin.
I don't have to mix. Wait, which one's the luxury?
The luxury is one single tap with 2 streams of water that get combined before it gets to your hands.
Because it's weird. Like the only time I've seen separate hot and cold is in like really rich people's houses.
Isn't that funny?
So maybe they're
think
just
that's-
trying to. Okay, moving on.
All right, rest of the house. Can you turn your washing machine and vacuum cleaner on at the same time? They're very specific about those 2 items. I take that as a yes. Can you install a washing machine and a dishwasher in the kitchen together in the same place?
Okay.
I'm not getting any answers out of anybody here.
I can't.
You're all
personally.
embarrassed about the condition of your flats, clearly. All right, let's keep going. Do you have, this is a good one, do you have a Gefängniszimmer? You say that, Yuri.
What is it?
Because to me it sounds like the translation of prison room.
Ein Gefängniszimmer.
Yeah.
A courtroom. Not a court. Like,
Of course I have a courtroom.
when you catch someone, that kind of court. A court.
Like,
the
do you
room
have a
has
prison
been
cell
caught.
in your house, is what it's saying, basically.
No, that would be Gefängniszimmer.
Aha, okay.
Gefängniszelle.
Mild.
What is it? What are they trying to say?
I'm not sure.
They're trying to say a room that's sort of caught between other rooms and doesn't have any windows, and it's just like basically, it's, yeah.
The crying room.
Okay. A dark room. Do you have a dark room? That's fine. Yeah. Of course I have a dark room.
All right. So if you have one of those, they're all minuses. All right. So let's go with some positives. Is there parquetry across the majority of your house? Do you know what parquetry is?
Like parquet floor?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like fancy little bits of wood that are
Right.
chipped into place. So that's a good thing if you do. Do you have a big balcony, meaning over 4.5 square meters? A built-in wardrobe or a storage room, or fancy decorations on the ceiling? Any of these things, they're all pluses. Your rent's going
Ceiling.
up. So,
I've got the ceiling.
You've got a ceiling. Not bad on. If you live on the 5th floor and your building doesn't have an elevator, that's a minus.
What, 4th floor is fine?
4th floor is fine. You're screwed.
What if it's a 4th floor, but like the ceilings are really high in your building? Like, shouldn't it be number of steps or elevation?
Yeah, a number of steps.
If your staircase is in poor condition, like ours is, full of graffiti and the paint falling off the walls and your light bulbs that are never changed, or if your house door is not lockable or is often open, which is also the case in my building, or if you don't have an electronic doorbell, although everyone's got an electronic doorbell these days, surely. I haven't been to a place that doesn't have like a ringer that the person upstairs can open the door with.
Sometimes they don't work though.
Well, if they don't work, that's a minus. Here's a good one. If you don't have bike racks or a designated bike storage area, that's a minus. I think there's very few buildings that actually do have designated bike racks in the Hof. So,
what's a non-electronic doorbell?
Something from, I don't know.
Like someone downstairs with...
However, if you have a video doorbell, that's a very big plus. So if you do, I'd be disabling that pretty quickly. If the building... Okay, this is one you want to know about, the party room. If your building has a party room, this is a very big plus. So I would like to know, does anyone in their building, because I can't even begin to imagine what this is like, have a separate room that everybody can go to and use for events or parties or things like that?
Like
any of our audience members? Has anyone even been to a house where this is like existing?
Housing projects in New York City, and this is not considered like a...
I don't think the Mietspiegel applies to New York City, but Joel, you're the expert.
What they've actually done is they've even determined what a party room is, which is a large room outside of the flat, which is reachable on foot, which to me is even more confusing.
Like you go to the venue.
What distinction are they trying to draw? Like apartment buildings that have zip line entrances to their... Like, what is that? Yeah, we have a party room, but only by fire pole, which is actually maybe better.
Okay, do you have a representative hochwertiges Eingangsbereich, which means representative high-value lobby, basically? Do you have some fancy lobby which has mirrors and marble and special lights and carpet and decorations? Anyone?
Special lights.
No. Okay, so nobody's getting that plus. What made me, what I wanted to know about it, I really want to go to a building that actually has these things. I want to see these things in existence. Are there anywhere in Berlin that has them?
Yeah, I've been to one building on Flughafenstraße that had like an electronic door closing thing, cameras, glass door, the whole thing. It was insane. It was weird. So it looked out of place.
The other plus, do you have park benches and a peaceful area on your property? Would be nice. Anyway, so these are the pluses and minuses that you go through when you're trying to determine whether your rent should go up or down. Thankfully,
So if you come out over, like, get rid of the park benches and like spray paint your things and
spray paint the video,
break your door locks. Your rent will never go up.
Set fire to the.
This is an awesome system. It's very democratic.
So if you get pluses on all those things, you're in the high band. If you don't, you're in the low band. So that's how they determine your rent. So I want to bring two different stories together here, if you don't mind. I'm going to just take one little second to bring two stories together. The first was the one we talked about, how the city government is buying back flats, and the second one is this, because through this whole process, I started to think, why don't we try to get all the neighbors together to try and actually buy the whole building from the owner of the building? Because that's not actually as impossible as it might sound, because if you...
Talking to my neighbors, that sounds pretty much impossible.
Well, that part might be difficult, but if you create a cooperative, which is Genossenschaft in German, there are actually banks who will quite willingly give you a huge loan to buy an entire property, as long as you can get together 20% of the value of the property, and as you form a cooperative. And 20% of the value of the property is usually kind of manageable by most people, but you have to form this non-profit, a cooperative. Do most people know what a cooperative is? I think so. So I'm in the process of trying to firstly convince the landlord of our building to sell the property at all, which is a bit of a challenge. But if he does, we're going to try and form a cooperative and then get a loan and try and actually buy the building so that we would rent it from the cooperative, but we would have basically lifelong cheap rent. So I'll let you know how that goes.
What's like a roundabout number of money that you need to put up for one flat? Of 3 rooms.
To join, in this case, for the cooperative, you would have to have around 50,000 euros to become a member of the cooperative. And what's really good is the same bank that gives you the loan for the house will also give you a loan for that 50,000 for your personal share in the cooperative.
Oh, no shit.
So for a little while, you'd be paying slightly extra rent because you're paying off the loans, but after that, you would have a building that has no loans on it, that you could charge whatever rent you'd like for it, or do whatever repairs you want on it, build your own party room if you want, and not worry about your rent going up.
You could plug in like 5 vacuums. Urban development news. Joel.
Last episode, we told you how the Berlin city government is being offered 10 million euros to sell an old fountain for the Stadtschloss.
Here we go.
Daniel, leave. Don't worry, this isn't going anywhere where I'm going to be criticizing the Stadtschloss. In fact, I think there's a great idea at the Stadtschloss.
What?
Yeah, they have this new idea of installing an old, what's called the glass flower lamp from the Palais de Republik, which was this, well, Yuri, you tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's the Palais de Republik, the former representative massive building that was in the place where now the Stadtschloss is being built during the time of the GDR. In their foyer, they had this gigantic 5-meter tall glass flower, which also weighs 5 tons, which was a very popular meeting point in its day and was sort of meant to be a symbol for openness and transparency.
5 tons of glass in a flower?
It has a metal stem, and then the flower petals are glass.
It was pretty big. It was like on a huge, it was like kind of a modern, like a
It's
sculpture
like a metric
Yeah,
ton?
5
That's somehow
meters.
like a tiny, no? What?
It was pretty big.
Okay.
It's huge. And when the Palais de Republik was torn down, after they had taken down the whole facades and everything for asbestos, they just demolished the whole thing, and a few things were put into storage, as has this glass flower. And now there are plans to dig this flower back out and place it somewhere in that new Stadtschloss.
Which would be, I think, a good thing.
I think it's a really, really good idea. And I think I've said many times on Radio Speaker of how I despise the plans of the Stadtschloss for the reason that it is displacing the history of the GDR, the Palais de Republik. I was saying that it shouldn't have been torn down in the first place. But now this made me think, and wouldn't it be a really cool idea to have the Stadtschloss as the Stadtschloss from the outside, and then the entire interior be stuff from Palais de Republik, or as much as we can still salvage out of storage somewhere. This
You guys
way,
get paid off or something?
this
Why did I
way-
get a piece of this?
No,
stuff?
this way we would be commemorating both parts of German history. You know, the aristocratic past of Friedrich the Great, and then the GDR.
I'm down with it, Yuri. Unfortunately, this is some news that David Duchovny would not be too happy to learn. Spandau, the city of Spandau, which is to the west of Berlin, it doesn't like those big UFO-shaped rubbish bins that we talked about a few shows ago. Yeah. You might have noticed there's these big...
Oh, so Fox Mulder would be
Yeah,
upset about this, not David Duchovny.
I've got to say I didn't write that intro.
Okay.
that was my idea.
Okay. Oh, no, he's an actor. It's okay. We'll talk later.
By extension, hippie.
What's the news about UFO bins, Yuri?
Yeah, so Spandau have trialed these big bins that you see around Alexanderplatz, Warschauer Straße, and a bunch of other spots in the city, which we sort of like, I think. And after a trial period, they're now being removed again because the people didn't like them. The people of Spandau. They were apparently destroying the old town atmosphere that they have in Spandau. Much in contrast to the regular orange bins.
Oh, those old-timey orange molded plastic things from ye olde times. Yeah, those ones, yeah.
They're much better for Old Town feel.
But unfortunately,
Oh
they're
my
also
God.
getting rid of the tested water bottle holders for refund bottles, which that's no good. So they had set up these tested systems where you could put the bottles in a separate box, which I've heard suggested by many people is a good idea, so that the bottle collectors don't have to put their hands through the bins and, you know. But apparently jerks were just putting coffee cups and rubbish in the place where the recycled bottles should go. And they ruined it for everyone. They're taking them away too.
Idiots.
While we're on urban development news, the former casino for Stasi officers is going to be revived.
Yes, that is a building, one of the many buildings at the old Stasi headquarters in Lichtenberg, house number 22, which used to house, as you said, a casino for Stasi officers, and that is going to be remade now into
Literally, like they go in for like roulette and play cards and
leisure,
okay.
and it's now going to be turned into a info center with a library on the SED regime. SED is the party that ran the GDR. It's going to have event venues and also a cafe.
Well, it's not going to have a casino.
No.
Oh, this whole story was a big tease. I thought a former casino was going to be revived. Like we could actually go and play casino. Like pretend we were Stasi officers where they hung out.
Well, I guess you can.
Right. Well.
And this is following on from the whole. There are plans to turn the whole headquarters, which is a lot of buildings. This is house number 22. I don't know how many houses there are, but last year house number 1, which used to house the office of Stasi boss Erich Mielke. That building has been turned into a Stasi museum in January last year.
All right. How about in other Nazi and Stasi-related real estate news? Who wants to buy Joseph Goebbels' old summer villa?
Can we just pause to admire the beauty of the tabloid genius of that intro there?
That's great copy.
I got Nazi, Stasi, real estate, Goebbels all into one intro right there.
And summer.
The city is still struggling to sell off a beautiful lakeside property, which is to the north of the city, around an area called Borgensee. It includes a villa that was once used by the Nazi propaganda boss, Joseph Goebbels, as well as a former DDR youth training camp. So Nazis and Stasis all in one. Actually, I'm going to take that back. It wasn't Stasi. It was the German Youth Association, which
FDJ,
which was not a Stasi association. So the huge property has these massive ornate halls for lectures and dances, but nobody wants to buy it because of its connection to Goebbels. So they've actually had 3 attempts to flog off the property to developers, but they've all failed. And the caretaker of the building says the whole thing's just rotting away because it's all unheated and the thing's just leaking and the roof has got all sorts of problems. And he actually had this quote. He said, "I wish a whole lot of people would move here quickly and revive the estate." And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Because we're quite frequently talking about a whole bunch of people who are moving here quickly and who would probably love to revive the estate. But I don't know if the Berlin city government has put 2 and 2 together and maybe figured out that refugees might be able to do something about this property they're trying to flog.
Well, it is on the market. If you find it and want it, it's yours.
Yeah, Joel, why don't you get one of your co-ops together?
Oh, yeah.
And now into public transport news. Joel?
Yeah, we're going to get a whole bunch of new trams on the tracks.
Yes. Oh yes. The BVG has ordered 47 new trams from the construction company Bombardier, and also have augmented an order of 25-car trams to now be 7-car trams. This is to cope with increasing demand for public transport. And the BVG, as well as the Finance Minister Matthias Kolatz-Ahnen and Urban Development Senator Andreas Geisel, they've all signed a letter of intent making known their intentions to extend the current BVG contract from 2020 to 2035, which secures the BVG monopoly on U-Bahn, tram, bus, and also some ferry transportation in the city.
What's that say? Okay, watch out for closing train doors.
I did write that. That's my worst intro written there ever. Sorry about that, Dan. A man has died and a woman was badly injured. This is in 2 separate accidents involving closing S-Bahn train doors. In November, a 57-year-old man got stuck in closing doors and was actually dragged to his death. Last week, a 34-year-old woman got stuck indoors and was dragged along the platform, and she hit her head on several objects before the train actually came to a stop. So they're serious when they tell you to stand back from those doors.
Here's an idea from Rotterdam. Cyclists don't have to wait at red lights in the rain.
This is our bicycle news. So apparently in Rotterdam, they've come up with this experiment where they're going to put rain sensors on all the traffic lights. So this is going to reduce the waiting time for bikes in bad weather. Isn't that cool?
Very cool. I think this is not the only city that does no red light waiting for bicycles.
I mean, if you wait at red lights on your bicycles at all, which
That's an option.
Some of us do not. Yes. Okay.
My housemate was fined 130 euros for running a red light recently.
Be warned. So coming up for our new addition to Radio Speckhof, or new since last episode, it's the sports news.
Yes, this is How About Dem Dolphins? All right, so this time when I Googled Berlin sports, I came up with the Eisbären, which is our local citywide hockey team. They're doing very well. They're at the top of their table. They also have an interest after a couple of big wins over Köln and Augsburg, which are also cities in Germany. And they're up at the top right now. They were actually formed in 1954 and were part of the sports club originally called Dynamo Berlin, which was associated with the East German police and Secret Service. And in 1971, that hockey league, the East German Hockey League, went down to 2 teams, of which they were one. It was the smallest ice hockey league in the world. They won about half the championships. So that's pretty good. And then 1990, after unification, both of those teams were integrated into a German. They struggled for a while, but their most recent title was in 2012, and they are the current record holder for the most Deutsche Ice Hockey League championships. And the thing is like once you start getting the Wikipedia hole of German ice hockey, and it's nice. Ice Baron, they're a fun team, and they're very popular. I looked up to see who owned them. It's Philip Frederick Anschutz. So I decided to find out who that was. And he's the leader of the Anschutz Entertainment Group. And it turns out he's an American guy who took his oil money from his family and then decided to invest that in sports franchises and making movies like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And so AEG, though, it's one of these companies you're like, oh, I like my local sports team, but it turns out they're all just owned by terrifying multinational corporations.
Oil magnates.
Oil magnates. So like if you're like, really into supporting media spree or he's really into philanthropy to support organizations that go after Christian values on television and radio. AEG is also the company which provided Michael Jackson with his doctor Conrad Murray.
How long did you spend on Wikipedia, just going through? How many hyperlinks are we up to here?
It's cold outside. So what I realized is, by the way, I'd just like to make it clear for liability purposes that AEG was found not liable in the death of Michael Jackson, despite assigning them Conrad Murray. So I don't get sued by Anschutz Entertainment Group. But here's the thing: is we have this great system for sports clubs and local teams and kids, when they start doing extracurricular sports, they join clubs and they grow up. And whatever area you live in, there are sports teams right nearby where you can go and watch them play anything between barely playing the sport and nearly professional, and there's no tickets, and you can be literally their biggest fan. So I think from now on, during this section, I'm going to be covering local sports, really local sports. Next month, I'll be covering the soccer field across the street from my house. And I encourage everyone to go out and whatever, if you have any interest in this, you can just go watch whatever sport you want, and really local sports that don't kill Michael Jackson, or not kill Michael Jackson. It's fine. Anyway, that was how about them both Dolphins?
The other upside will be that our listeners will know just about as much as those locals teams as they would about the Ice Baron, so there's really a no-lose situation there for you.
Okay, guys, we're almost out of time now, but before we finish, here's a little update on our main story from last time about the strike at Kino Babylon.
Yes, the update is that the strike is over. In mid-December, the striking workers agreed to call off their boycott after the management of the cinema agreed to give them severance payouts. So there were 6 striking workers. They've had their contracts cancelled peacefully, and they're going to get a payout to leave. So we no longer have to feel conflicted about when we go and watch a movie about whether we should or not. So.
Have you seen the jobs being advertised again?
I haven't, but I'm sure you can apply, Yuri.
€8 an hour, $8.50.
It better be $8.50. That's a minimum wage.
Yeah.
That's what they were striking. No, they were striking for more.
And we got to say thanks to a few people, Dan.
All right, yeah. Thanks, Chad and Donow 115 for hosting us.
Yeah,
it's always
thanks for
awesome.
having us here.
Turn on the lights. Mobile Kino lent us their sound system for tonight, and that's important for you hearing us. Thanks to Victoria for filming. Viva l'Amour. And she's got the picture show on the 6th of February. That's a life drawing with live music. That's going to be 2 models and 2 musicians. It's got a Mardi Gras voodoo theme, and you can find that at thepictureshow.de, like THE pictureshow.de. I'm glad I spelled out 3 letters out of that. Okay.
The other thing we should say before we go is that people should, if you're interested in local news, you should sign up for our newsletter. We're going to be putting out a weekly newsletter with little updates. Don't worry, you won't ruin the content of this. There's no spoilers, or at least a few spoilers, but you'll stay informed at least. So the way you do that is you go currently to our Facebook page, and there's a big button that says newsletter. Just stick your email address in there, and we'll send you a newsletter once a week with info about what's going on in the city, getting real local.
And if you're part of the audience, there's a list at the bar.
Okay. All right.
On that note, we should thank our audience for coming along.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming out, guys.
It's been a great
Thanks,
show.
everyone. Cheers.
Thank you for listening.
That.
Radio.